Ron here from the hit podcast, The Other Side of Wall Street. And if you're like most of us here in the trading community, you no doubt have mentors or experts that you look up to for trading advice and knowledge. Well, how many times have you wished you could just sit down with one of those experts and have a good old one-on-one conversation with no script, no planned questions, just a friendly chat? Well, that's what we're bringing to you here. Each week, we'll visit with a different expert and have an up-close and personal conversation about anything and everything involving trading. So sit back and enjoy as we get to know our special guest. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Market Masters. My name is Ron Harrison. I'm here today with special guest Jeremy Newsom. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you, Ron. Pleasure to be here, sir.
Yes, and for those of you who don't know Jeremy, over the last 6 years, Jeremy has built a reputation as one of the foremost pioneers in physical therapy. His vigor and drive for helping communities, families, and individuals grow their financial literacy is second to none. And Jeremy was able to create and launch a company called Real Life Trading back in November 2014. And this starting point has allowed him to assist and enrich tens of thousands of lives while also growing the company organically to a seven-figure business. Good job.
Thanks, man.
Specializes in trader psychology, candlesticks, day trading, swing trading, and option strategies. So that's kind of a couple of those things is what we specialize here. We highly specialize in trader psychology. And second would be option selling, because of the fact that the way we teach, I believe that the more odds you can stack in the favor of the beginning trader, the better chance they have of not failing.
Yeah. And
I'm sure you've read as much as I have that probably 90%, 95% of all beginning traders probably fail, go out their accounts, give up. So that's really the target audience that we try to deal with, is those that are starting out and try to help them circumvent some of the problems that even I had when I first started. So I know how tough that was. So what I like when I ever have a guest on, I always try to research them as much as I can before they start. And your background, I love. I mean, I can't get enough of it. So maybe to educate my listeners on who you are, where you came from, your journey, all that, maybe go into how you got started, if you don't mind doing that. I know you do it a lot already, but...
Hey, no worries, man. I can absolutely do that. I appreciate you taking time to do some research, man. That means a lot to me. If you would have told me 10 years ago that people would have researched me, I would not have thought that would be the case. But I'll give you as quick as a good background as I can. I grew up and was born and raised in Statesboro, Georgia. That was actually the big city. Technically, it's called Cleto, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes south of where they filmed Deliverance.
Oh.
We're talking out there. And I grew up. Yeah. Exactly. I grew up in a very financially underwhelming family, but I was very happy, right? We didn't know necessarily that I was poor. Had a great childhood. We were just financially not well off. Mm-hmm. And it all started, man, when I was 6 years old. The movie, still to this day, my favorite movie, Forrest Gump. So about 76% of the way through the movie, he starts recounting his life and says that Lieutenant Dan invested in a fruit company and they never had to worry about money anymore. Well, the crazy part, Ron, was I'd never actually heard that phrase in my life. That was like a paradigm shift, right? Never having to worry about money anymore. I didn't know what that meant. I'd never actually heard that. So I asked my dad, what is investing and what is the Apple company? Because I wanted to do that. I didn't want us to worry about money anymore. So he told me about Apple, and he told me how the stock market works. And I simply said, you should invest in Apple. He didn't have any money. He said no, so on and so forth. So what I did is I raised some money that summer by selling blackberries, like the actual fruit off the bush, door to door, as a 6-year-old. And that was the only resource I had at the time, was just things that were around me that I could sell. And I sold them. I made $1,300 that summer selling blackberries. And so my dad eventually said that he would match me. And come to find out later, he borrowed the money from my uncle, but it doesn't really matter. We bought $2,600 of Apple stock in 1994.
Which is cheaper than it is now.
Yeah. Right now, I mean, that's a, multi-million-dollar investment. And the ironic, sad part is I sold it in 2000 because I was 12 years old in 2000 and we were moving from Georgia to Florida. And during this move, I just kind of asked my dad, hey, how's the stock doing? And he told me. And, granted, taking $2,600 and turning it into $12,000 for a lot of people was a killer return, but that was over, 6. Yeah, did very well. It was over 6 years. And I got lucky. We sold right at the tech bubble. And he told me, Jeremy, you're never going to make a trade like that ever again in your life. This was pure luck. You need to take this money and do something really safe with it. So at 12, I bought some II bonds and some IE bonds. And I think when I was 18, I sold them for like $12,047 or something.
I'm not a fan of bonds here. I tell you that.
Yeah, man. So 18, I sold the money and I just blew it on stupid 18-year-old stuff. And eventually, slowly, tried to learn about the stock market through what most people do is they go to college. Mm-hmm. That's what you do, right? You go to college to learn stuff. So I went to get a finance degree at the University of Florida. Go Gators. And as much as I love the company and the organization and the football team, they didn't teach me anything about the stock market. Right. While I was getting a finance degree, Ron, they were just telling me about, bonds and coupon yield rates and dividends and just your basic general stuff. I didn't really learn anything substantial until I had a review, a peer-to-peer review with my boss. At the time, I worked at Nationwide Insurance, and his name is Rob. So I had a meeting with Rob. I saw on his computer like these charts. I didn't know what they were, but I kind of felt like they were stock market related. So I asked him about it. And ever since then, man, that was what propelled me on the journey to just learning and understanding about the market, because I knew since the age of 6 to 12 that I wanted to do this. I just didn't know how. And I was never really taught how to reach out and get information, right? And through school, most of the time, as students, we're taught what we need to learn, but we're not taught how to learn something. Right. And that was just a piece that finally fell into place for me.
It's funny, our stories are so similar because when I was growing up, any movie, any TV show that had something to do with the stock market, or if one of the characters was involved in the stock market, I was glued to that like crazy. And I had no idea what they were talking about, what was going on, but I knew somehow in the back of my mind, that's where the money was.
Which were some of those movies, Ron? What do you remember?
The one I can remember for sure is Tony Curtis and Roger Moore, The Persuaders.
Oh, yes.
And absolutely. Was the Wall Street guy from that, right? Yep. So, and I remember also when I was a kid, I would go home at lunchtime from like elementary school, and I was in a rural area too. I was in Maryland, and I would listen to the radio, and every noon they'd have like the crop reports on, predecessors to futures reports. So, and I'd be listening to that, and I would even look at the financial pages in the newspaper, again, not knowing what I'm looking at, but I just knew that somewhere in there's something I need to know, and I just kept going, and eventually poked my head somewhere in the right place and started buying stock.
I love it. Do you remember your first stock that you bought?
No, actually I don't. No, actually my first, when I really started was, I went to school, I got a degree in engineering, electrical engineering. Okay. I had an electronics company, my own company. Okay. And I sold that, took the cash, hopped in the car. I was in Utah at the time, headed to Manhattan. I'm heading to Wall Street. Enough of this. I'm get busy. So here, they looked in the paper, found that there was like 8,000 ads for stockbrokers. Applied, and as a sad story, all you had to do was be alive to be a stockbroker, really. If you breathe, they hire you. Took the Series 7 exam. Again, in that, like you were talking about in college, there's nothing in the Series 7 that tells you how to read charts, how to analyze anything, how to buy stock. It's all this legalities, what to say, what not to say, terms, that kind of stuff, but nothing that teaches you how to do it. So then I got a job at the brokerage, and I don't know if you know, but when you're a broker, you don't do anything except get on the phone and cold call all day.
Yep, exactly.
And they give you the call sheets. So you get on the phone, you start talking. Hi, Mr. So-and-so. I got this great stock. I've done all this research. Blah, blah. You're just reading off a sheet of paper. You don't know nothing about it.
So this is very boiler room-esque, huh?
Oh, totally. Oh, and actually it was the same time as that. I don't know if you know, a boiler room was written by one of the brokers that worked for Gordon Belfort at Stratton Oakmont.
No way. I did not know that.
Yeah, so Belfort wrote, of course, Wall Street, But then one of his brokers decided, I'll do it a little more seriously. So he wrote the screenplay for that, and that became Boiler Room.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, the time when I was on Wall Street was exactly the same time as he was getting in trouble at Stratton Oakmont. So this kind of stuff was going on. So anyway, my big epiphany, which I want to ask you about in a second, is once I finally ended up going from broker to trader, working at one of the larger firms, trading their money, and did that for a year or so, decided I knew everything there was to know about what I was doing.
Definitely.
And why am I doing this for this guy? I can do it for myself.
Definitely.
Went home, set everything up, quit my job, started trading on my own. Everything that was working so well when I was at the firm, within a matter of a month or two, was totally failing. And that was because, which I didn't discover until much later, I went from trading someone else's money, following a set of rules that was people watching me, making sure I followed the rules. So I had supervision, someone else's money, and then as soon as you start trading your own money, it starts screwing up.
That's right.
Fear, greed. So then I started losing money like crazy. And I have a suspicion that you had the same events happen in your trading journey.
Definitely. To an extent. I didn't know it at the time, but yeah, absolutely. So kind of what happened for me, the very, very first trade that I knowingly started taking, I was 20, I believe, 2021. Right, yeah, 20. And it was First Majestic Silver, which is actually still around. It's ticker symbol AG. And what I did is when I sat down with Rob that day, he told me how covered calls work, which is, the most basic, boring strategy of all time that implements stocks and options. But I understood it immediately. And I more or less felt like you couldn't lose on that strategy. And you technically can't on that particular strategy. You can only lose on the stock itself, but that's another thing. The covered call, I was like, man, I get this. I understand it. I like it. So I learned over the course of a few weeks how to do a self-directed 401k. I sold all of my shares. I had like the target, 2025 or whatever it was, retirement fund. And I just sold all of the positions in there, went to cash, and I had about $10,000 because I did invest aggressively from 18 to 20 in my 401k. I knew you were supposed to do that, right? I just didn't know, as most people don't, Ron, they don't know what's behind the scenes in their 401k. They all know, do a 401k, but they don't know what they're investing in. They don't know what the stocks are. They don't know what the composition of the funds are. They're just buying.
Yep.
So that's what I did. I had 10 grand. My company was a great match. And to this day, I'm a big fan of Nationwide. I love what they do, but they matched it. I think it was up to like 8%. So every paycheck, I was putting in 16% of my paycheck, blah, blah, blah. 2 years later, I got 10 grand and I took all of that money and just bought shares of AG. And the cool part, here's how I did the research, Ron. So I went into Google and I said, which silver stocks to buy? Clicked enter. And that was literally the first one that popped up. Like it was a list, because of the SEO. First, Majestic, and had a ticker A. So it was just SEO optimized. Yeah. So, bro, that was it. I bought $10,000 worth of that stock. It was at like $12.50. So I think I bought 900 shares. And then I did a covered call at 15, got called away the next month for a $3 profit on 900 shares. So I made like $2,700 in a month by pressing buttons. And at the time, that was more than I made at work, or at least very close to it, in a whole month. And Ron, no one ever told me, man, that you could make more trading than you can at work. Like that had never been mentioned out of anyone's mouth ever. Blew me away. I was just absolutely shocked. So that
I guess
very next day,
right?
Exactly, man. That very next day, I call my dad. And I'm like, Dad, you're going to be so proud of me. This is what I just did. I grew my account from 10,000 to like 13,000. He's like, amazing, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, hey, I'll give you some of my money to do it with. And I was like, oh, cool. So he gives me his money, and you're right. Things slowly started changing, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how or why it was changing. He gave me $103,516 to trade. It was with Charles Schwab at the time, and I was doing covered calls with it. Now, initially, I was actually doing very well. The first 3 months, I made like 36 grand. Because what I was doing is I was taking the whole 100,000 and buying a stock, and then just selling it out of the money option for more than it cost to buy. And I would just hold through the fluctuation of the stock, and if I got called away, cool. And then that was it. So that's all I did for 3 months, and I made money. And then I realized I went to one of those seminars, like, hey, here's how you make $1 million in a weekend. And they were telling me about buying options. So I had never even heard about buying options. I only knew to sell them. But it made sense to me. I was like, yeah, okay, got it. So I took that $130,000 and started buying weekly options with it. So again, the same thing was I was just taking all of the money and I'm just putting it all on one option. So you're talking 20, 30, 40% moves in hours, as you know, on 136 grand. So this account was fluctuating like mad for like 3 weeks. I mean, it went all the way up to $250,000 and then just started dropping. And once it started dropping, that's when the fear kicked in. And man, I probably wrestled with that for like 3 or 4 years. Couldn't figure out why. Like psychologically, I didn't just exit when I was like negative 25 grand. Mm-hmm. So taking the account, not to mention all the upside. From $250,000 to 200,000, I never sold. And then from 200 to 100, I never sold. And then 100 to 75,000, never exited a single position. And then 75 to 50, and then 50 to 25, and then boom, Friday expiration hits. I'm holding 25 grand worth of an option expiring out of the money. And you know how that works because you sell them. Yeah. I lost like 25 grand in a day, and I just didn't know. I was panicked the whole time, and I didn't know why. Until much later, months later, once I figured out the whole trading psychology thing and I understood what that meant and how money can scare you and control you and can grip you. And that was definitely an aspect of trading that I had no knowledge of. I'd never had encountered. I didn't know anything about, but that was a really big learning lesson for sure. So bottom line, I ended up losing all this money.
And the sad thing is, I mean, there are so many people out there, so many books written, so many courses you can buy and take to teach you how to do this kind of trade or that kind of trade, or, do options, do this, do that. Almost none of them talk about trading psychology.
No, very few. Yeah, very few.
When you start trading. And to me, that is the most important. I think you could almost say that you could probably go to Barnes & Noble and buy any book, any course you want. And you could probably make it work if you have your fear, greed, and ego in check.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, let's just go back to the Apple example. Anyone who's listening, yourself and myself included, could have just taken all of our money and bought Apple realistically at any point in time ever through history. And if we still had it today, we'd be up substantially. Mm-hmm. It's like, why didn't we just all do that? Like what trader psychology, what mental hurdle did we all have to simply not just do that? Or do it with Amazon or Facebook or Google or Shopify or Wix. The process, the story goes on. There's so many companies we could have just done that on. Why didn't we? And we can come up with answers, but at the end of the day, there is some type of mental lapse. There is some type of bridge of fear that held you back from doing whatever investment that you didn't take or take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. And also another problem that I see that people have is the media.
Oh, absolutely.
All the information is being pumped out there to the poor beginning consumer and traders, and so they end up forming opinions and beliefs, and they know exactly where the stock's going to go in so many days. So they start buying stuff based on what they heard, what someone else said. And of course, those people have their own agendas. They aren't trying to help you make money.
Man, absolutely. I don't know if your listeners can see this, but there's this guy on my phone named Samuel Wynn. He is texting me really over the weekend of like, hey man, what news source should I listen to about stocks? Because he feels like there's so much out there to listen to. And he's like, what should I listen to? What's the right source of information? And I told him, I was like, dude, when you find the right source of information,
yeah.
Let me know, man, because it all has a spin. It all has its own story. What we have to do as individuals is listen to something and at some point in time, ask other people, other opinions, get multiple advices from multiple sources, and then amalgamate that into what's going to be end up being your not only trading plan, but it could be your life plan. I mean, because we're talking about media, like there's what's the best advice on relationships or running or spirituality or money or sex or religion or politics. I mean, at some point we have to, as humans, blend that ourselves.